Once again, we thank our dear Pastor Mark and our colleague here in today's session that he will be sharing with us in this topic of utilizing relational ministry in the Boys Brigade. And as you know, Pastor Mark is no stranger to all of us. If you don't know him, who is him yet? Pastor Mark is our development executive in the Boys Brigade headquarters. At the same time, he is a pastor that is in the Baptist. It's a Baptist pastor, in a sense. All right. So, but I'll leave the more detailed introduction again by him for those who know him, don't know him yet, to him. All right. So I think before we start, can we open in a quick prayer so that we will get for this session today. All right. Cool. All right. Let us pray. Almighty Father, we want to give thanks to you for this time that we can come together as officers to learn together as this one big family of not only Boys Brigade, but Christ's family, Lord. And in this one body of Christ, Lord. And Lord, we thank you, even though some places are raining, some places are shining. We give thanks to you because even the rain brings comfort and brings cooling air to us. Even the sun provides the necessary energy to keep things dry, Lord. Lord, just want to pray that you bless this session and you share your words and your message to us through our Pastor Mark here today, Lord. We just want to upload this session into your hand, Lord. We pray all this in the mighty name of Jesus Christ. Amen. All right, Mark, to you.
Thank you very much, George. Good evening, everybody. For those of you who are not familiar who I am, my name is Mark. I'm a pastor at First Baptist Church in Subang Jaya, which is also the company, the sponsoring body of the Second Subang Jaya Company. I am also the development executive of the Boys Brigade headquarters, so I look into policies, protocols, procedures, and programs, to which I just want to mention my heartfelt thanks to the Brigade family. Boys Brigade Ministry has been one of my dream positions to be in, to be able to be part of this great organization and to contribute in a bigger platform to help out our 120 companies and 10,865 members. Truly, it's a joy. It really is. In my spare time, if I ever have any, I'm also the co-founder and director for Explain Apologetics. It's a local ministry that talks about explaining our faith in Jesus Christ. So with all that, it then brings out my passion. My passion is youth and young people. Youth and young people, not just in seeing them from a distance, but also participate them on a face-to-face and on a face-to-face and on life-to-life basis. That was the drive for my calling in youth ministry, and it continues to be even as I go into apologetics as well as for Boys Brigade ministry. A full disclosure, I would just want to say this, that what I'm about to mention here today is not my own material. I will share the book in a moment. But I also want to just mention to you that this is not anything too new to the Boys Brigade Malaysia. As I was reading the book and as I was thinking, wow, this is really good information for officers to have, I also want to acknowledge that quite a number of us will look through this material and say, hey, I'm doing that right now. And the idea is not really to teach something new, but rather to intentionally discuss it. So I hope very quickly after this, because I only have 12 slides today, it's going to be very, very quick, because I would like to have more of a discussion. I would like to discuss more on the application, questions that you guys might have. I would like to interact with that a lot more, as well as I would like to just share life. And I also want to recognize there are actually a few gentlemen and a few officers here who plays a very key role and example in my personal life, to which then I want to discuss over here. So without further ado, let me just share my slides and then we can go through it together. So 4 weeks ago, we were looking at youth and young people, and I was just giving you a lot of statistics and dynamics in seeing of how, first and foremost, of how youth and young people now look at worldviews very differently, how they are very connected, globally connected, but at the same time, locally, they're very disconnected. So they may know what's going on over in the United States, but they do not know what's happening in Malaysia. So we have that kind of scenario. We also have youth and young people today are very morally driven, but they don't necessarily have a fixed worldview. And this is very contradictory towards the gospel, because the gospel provides a very firm, objective worldview, to which then it brings about more applications in many shades and many shapes and sizes in order for it to be applied. So it's very topsy-turvy. And already I noticed in the past, yes, there was an acknowledgement, you know what, Mark, yeah, you're right. I see that happening among my young people. That's the reason why, you know, I as a boomer, or even as a Gen X or a Gen Y, I don't understand the millennials today. They look like a totally different species. So we had that discussion before. After that, my dear friend and colleague over at Malaysia Baptist Seminary, Brandon, talks about how to plan a youth program. And last week, we had some very deep reflection on the philosophy of Sir William Alexander Smith. What I would like to do is I'd like to tie all that. There's a lot of theory, there's a lot of reflection. Now we're going to come to a bit more application, and that is utilizing relational ministry in Boys Brigade. Okay, now relational ministry is a term that was put together by Mr. Jim Burns. Okay, and let's see. Yeah, Jim Burns wrote this book. It's called Uncommon Youth Ministry, and one of the main thrusts of his book here is about the idea of relational youth ministry. So I would like to first and foremost say this: granted already in the book, it says this, that relational youth ministry is not a strategy. I have no intention, brothers and sisters, because I as a pastor, I know how difficult it is. The Boys Brigade is already a solid, stellar program. So why am I talking about another ministry on top of another ministry? Because while Boys Brigade as a ministry is a very fixed identity, program, strategy, relationship, organizational structure, relational youth ministry is not a strategy. It's not an organization. It's not even a structure. Rather, it is a discipline which I believe the Boys Brigade will benefit highly from cultivating. Again, I want to mention quite a number of you officers here are probably doing it already. But I would like us to recognize that maybe we are doing this more of without thinking through. It's just very much part of your personality, part of your character, or perhaps it was a natural chemistry or natural development that has in the company, but not really intentionally utilized. That is the area that I would like to discuss. So when I say relational youth ministry, what am I talking about? It is a discipline of connecting and relating to members and officers intentionally. So the key thing is intentionality. Okay. All right, just a moment. Okay. So what is relational ministry? Relational ministry, first and foremost, just like any relationship, is not something that you can take it's not something that you can do in a one arm's distance. It's something that is incarnational. Now, what do I mean by incarnational? It is not a ministry to young people from a distance through a program, which Boys Brigade is doing very well. So we don't need to worry about that. We got that covered. The moment we have badge work, the moment we have fallen in parade, uniform inspection, Bible study, we all have that intact already. So incarnational ministry is ministering to young people with the officer's whole life. It is about developing tightly bound relationships with the members, using the program merely as a channel to cement the relationship. So you have the program, you have the setting. So if you take a look at the picture here, for example, you see the officer and the member. I remember my first time being a recruit, and I was being inspected with my white polo shirt and with my blue trousers and my black leather shoes. And I was being inspected, even though I had no uniform part to polish, I had no accessory to check or double check. Already the officer had something to inspect because it's part of the program. Is my shirt ironed? Are my trousers well pressed? Are my shoes polished? Already the critique has come up. At first, it seems to be very distant, and that's why a lot of the recruits, they seem very fearful. Oh, who is this officer? I will be afraid. Maybe he'll be very strict, very harsh, or maybe he's a very easy guy to please. This then develops through time incarnationally, in that the officer and the member, as they experience this adventure in the Boys Brigade together, as they regularly, check on the uniform, check on the program, check on the quality of the member, a relationship is built whereby I myself as a member, who then later become an NCO, will no longer feel afraid of the officer. I will respect him. I will mutually care for him. I want to help fulfill his challenges as well as his expectations. But I'm not doing so fearfully anymore. I have gained the self-respect because of a good incarnational relationship and relational ministry with him. So Jim Burns says this: as the ministry of Jesus was incarnate in the Gospels. Okay, not sour life, but so our life must be incarnate in BB or in any ministry. If we are to have a positive influence on our members, we must build relationships with them and live out our faith in their mindset. When a member looks at officers and NCOs, they're not just looking at leadership, they're not just looking at program. They're looking at personality, they're looking at a relationship, they're looking at character. So relational ministry is incarnational, meaning they're not just going to see what to do, they are going to see who to follow. Relational ministry is a team ministry. I'm very glad that the Boys Brigade Malaysia, in order to start a Boys Brigade, there's a requirement of at least 7 people who can hold the board, who can hold the positions in the executive committee when establishing ROS. Because without this team, there is no foreshadowing as to what to expect in the Boys Brigade. Okay, so it cannot be done by a one-man show. Even Sir William Alexander Smith, when he started with 2 volunteers and a chaplain. Okay, so it is a team ministry. So likewise, when it comes to team dynamics, how is this important? And what do I mean by team? When I mean team ministry, I'm looking at the horizontal relationship in our hierarchy. So it is among officers, among NCOs, and among members. It's horizontal. The interconnection will come later. But first and foremost, officers, I just want to emphasize, in order for relational ministry, or in order to develop a good ethos of relationship ministry, you must first and foremost develop a good relationship horizontally among your officers. So members will seek out role models. They are not going to ask, sir, can you be my role model? What kind of person you are? They're going to start asking the question, they're not even going to ask the question. They're just going to watch and tick off the list in the back of their heads to see who would be the person that they would resonate best with and who they will want to follow. So in short, the members are always watching you. Members will also judge the attractiveness and validity of the gospel, not by how the pastor presents it, not by what good pictures we can use, not by what videos or Bible study material, but they will want to see the gospel application by the relationships that the officers are having with one another. Okay. Furthermore, when the members see how the officers treat each other, the members will think, okay, so this is how then I should treat my fellow members, my fellow comrades. So Boys Brigade, in this hierarchy, the idea is for mirroring. The NCOs will look at the officers and see how they do things. The members will look at the NCOs to see how they do things. And so the members, including NCOs, in order to see what sort of relationship or what sort of camaraderie are they supposed to have, they will first see how the officers treat each other. So in doing this, I would like to recommend some practical approaches. And again, most likely, quite a number of companies are doing at least 2 of these things. Number 1 is do things together. It's a very simple thing, pray together, share with each other. Now, these are, of course, the typical religious or spiritual things that we need to do. But let's add more value to that. Let's have meals together. Let's have fellowship. Let's even play games together. Why? Because oftentimes, especially if you have young officers with you, the young officers will look at the older officers and have the uncle-auntie relationship, and no matter what, they will always kowtow or have their head slightly lower than the older officers. But that breaks immediately the moment you start doing things together. Even as something as simple as play Monopoly or play chess together or watch a movie or fellowship very freely or have a barbecue. You know, and so that way, not only will the younger officers will be able to see the older officers in a more relaxed position, the younger officers will be able to truly display their real self outside of their uniform and in fellowship with one another. Being proactive and intentional to build relationships with your fellow officers. This often gets overlooked, but remember, as officers develop mutual love, support, and respect for each other, members will notice and respond. So again, this builds up to the idea of they want to see how the officers are interacting with one another. So again, we would be doing this quite as a second nature, but Relational Youth Ministry calls us to actually think of, okay, you know, I have a new officer, he was a staff sergeant before. I have a new officer, he has never been in rank and file before. I see him, what potential do I see in him to take certain portfolios in ministry? Then this will apply as to how the NCOs will treat each other and how the NCOs will also treat the members as well. And what will end up happening is that there will be a natural progression. Now, so this might be a partial solution, ladies and gentlemen. For those of us who seem to have no idea why, as we go into our 60s and 70s in age, why is it the 20s and 30s are not taking up the mantle of being captain or officer in charge? The reason why they don't do so, or at least they don't jump onto it so easily, is because most likely they have never seen what an officer does in the background, or they've never seen what an officer does to prepare for the meeting, and also they probably never had, or they don't have a regular, fluid, truthful, transparent relationship with the older officers. And because of that, they will always seem to say, oh, I can't fit their shoes, but actually that's not the point. We're not supposed to fit each other's shoes. We're supposed to walk on the journey and adventure together. And that's where the incarnational, relational, and ministry, and that's where teamwork and team building and praying for one another, upholding one another, inviting one another for a hangout or an activity together, that actually develops and brings up a fruition of relational ministry. Relational ministry is also modeling. So I took this photo to some years ago, and I think it really proves a point. The members will look at how the officers act. The members will always look at how the officers act. And ever since Captain Esther, the former captain of the 10th Global Company, did this pose at first from the very beginning, then people start to follow. Now, as time goes by, when Zhang Gao-wing was a captain, he did this pose. When Mr. David Chin, now he's the captain of the 10th Global Company, he does this pose. And guess what happens? The officers follow, the NCOs follow, the members follow. So members will best learn through our actions, our reactions, and our lifestyle. So how we react to a problem, how we react to a conflict, how we display our lifestyle, they will model and they will follow after. NCOs, for example, will first learn how they should relate to their members by how the officers should relate to them. Now, I just want to mention this. This may sound a lot. And this may sound like, oh, you know, Pastor Mark, are you telling me that I should invite members into my house all the time? You know, or do I need to show it to them all the time? The answer is no. The moment you start making it seem so unnatural, then it will lose its authenticity. So If the members don't relate or connect with you well at first, don't push it, don't push it, don't rush it. Okay, then the relationship will develop and progress as time goes by. It's just that the officer needs to be willing to share their lives with the NCOs as to who they really are in whatever stage of life they're in. So I remember when I started out in the 2nd Subang Jaya Company as a warrant officer in 2012. At that time, I was engaged. So of course, the members will ask, oh, what does it feel like to be engaged? You know, what is your wife, what is your fiance like? And then when I invite them to participate in the wedding, then they'll start asking questions, you know, wow, Mark, what's it like to say yes to one woman for the rest of your life? Sometimes you will say it's scary, sometimes you say it's wonderful, sometimes you say, I can't wait to journey together in this adventure with one other who will be willing to commit for the gospel and for one another. And then after you get married, you have a child, you know, they ask what's it like being a father. It's just being willing to be truthful to the member when they start asking, and so that they may even learn to model after you. Now, you may say, Mark, I'm not perfect. I'm not perfect. Of course, I'm not perfect either. But I'm the only one. I seem to be the one of those few people who be willing to open up our lives so broadly so that people can see and model. And I bet you there are better families out there than even myself that can actually share in on this journey together with the members. Relational ministry involves unconditional love. So coming to a very different, challenging environment such as Boys Brigade can be very daunting. So the member, when they come in, please bear in mind, a lot of them had come from either very pampered background, or they come from very hard knocks, you have to do things by yourself kind of environment. And so coming into Boys Brigade, where they have big challenges, but they have to learn how to work with one another, that's a very daunting experience for them to have. So it's crucial for officers to give them the space for try being part of the company and maybe even fail a few times. Demonstrate, and then in that failure, we can demonstrate God's grace at every opportunity possible. Please note, I'm not saying that grace is, okay, you forgive for all the mistakes all the time, but grace is to always remind them that this is the standard of Boys Brigade that we need to uphold. You're at a different level. Let us help you journey up towards there together. Okay? So a simple example is uniform inspection. We have a high standard of discipline. The belt buckles must be shiny. The runners must have a mirror finish. The haversack must be white as snow. The blues must be well ironed with creases not burnt into the trousers. The shoes must be clean. The shoes must be clean of dust and well polished. When a recruit first comes in, we're not expecting them to actually get that standard after 2 weeks. No, but 6 months in, 1 year in, they get better and better and better, and then maybe they achieve the expectation, or they even exceed your expectation, to which then you can share to them, well done, my good and faithful member. Okay, that is the idea of unconditional love. Conditional love is you give them an expectation, and if you fail, you kick them out. Unconditional love is the idea is that this is the standard, you're not there yet, but we're going to make it through together. All right? Relational ministry is also nurturing. When you see a member, you're not wanting to see the member and say, okay, you're my responsibility for just 1 year. No, you are my hope is to be able to see the member from rank and file, from whichever section they are, hopefully one day, until either they get discharged with good conduct and then become a good example in the working world or in the university or whatever stage of life they'll get into, or I hope to see them as my comrade. So seeing some of my members who were once my maggots, so former Captain Chang Kao Wing, so Lieutenant Chang Kao Wing was my recruit when I was a sergeant. David Chin was my recruit when I was on my first year as an officer, and they are one of the examples of joy that I have in seeing them going from recruit now as officers, as captains for a term, and no matter what, committed officers. So it's about nurturing. The BB adventure is a long one. No member turns into a stellar NCO overnight. You know, no member turns into a radical disciple of Jesus overnight either. Both adventures take time, with the officers not being ahead of them to guilt them or to catch up, nor whipping them from behind. Rather, it is journeying with them through the BB and gospel journey and nurture them to become all that God desires them to be. Like I said, most likely officers, you might be doing that for some. My question would be, do you have a plan? Do you have expectations? Do you have goals for your members that you would like them to achieve? And don't make it blanket. Every member is different. Customize it. This member, not good at drill, but good at worship. Okay, let's harness him. Let's harness it. Let's harness it. Let's refine him. This guy, great commander, but he has a temper. Okay, let's work on his temper. This member, he's a bit more artistically expressive. Okay, let's see him do presentations for singing and dancing. This guy is good with kids. This guy is physically wow. You know, he can really encourage members to be better. So you customize each and every member's journey so that and relate with them so that you can coach with them together. And things like this cannot happen only once a week. You will see them 2-3 times a week in order to see this through. So one very practical example to do in terms of nurturing is perhaps seeing your members off parade. So the brigade experience can often feel to a member like he's experiencing a different world every parade, and after parade is back to reality. Meeting members in their territory breaks down the walls and turns them into bridges, linking the world, which could often feel lonely and depressing, to the support and camaraderie of the brigade. So what is helpful is that if they have a great experience in BB, and then they suddenly see their mentors, their officers, their NCOs in school, or even in church, or even in the shopping mall, they suddenly sense, oh wow, you know, there's more to the Boys Brigade is not just a moment. Boys Brigade is a lifetime of relationship. So I know sometimes, I know it can be difficult, but so I'm not making this as an expectation, but I just want to say that when a member sees an officer showing up at a school event or a game or a lunch, it sparks an enthusiasm from the members because they appreciate the officer taking the time off to see them either at at their baptism service. Wow, you definitely got to be there. Or Avengers is coming out together. Let's watch it together. Or if you're in junior section, when Frozen came out, how many of them actually wanted to go and watch with you? Even though they could watch it with their parents, they could watch it with their friends. But the moment you say, hey, why don't we go and watch it together? They'll be like, wow, that's another layer of ministry closer to each other's hearts. Furthermore, one thing I did learn, one thing I have found out as a youth minister in First Baptist Church, when I do this, I end up learning a lot more about them and their culture. So one case that I had was that there was a time when Cyber Cafe was very popular at that time. I can't play computer games to save my life. So what I did is this. Okay, I will tell them, okay guys, I will be your chaperone, but don't invite me to play the computer games. I'm not really good at. I'll check my email, I'll watch YouTube, I will prepare my sermons, but I'll just sit with you. And they say, okay, sure, Mark, we'd love to have you. And so we spend like an evening, a couple of hours playing. While they are playing computer games, I'm just doing stuff. I begin to notice their culture. I begin to notice the things that they do. And so one question I came up very bluntly to them, say, I got this question. Why is it you guys swear in Filipino? And they were speechless. They were like, yeah. You know? So it started out with this culture from YouTube videos that they've been seeing, and they brought it along in their expression. And then I asked them, what kind of message are you portraying in saying, in swearing either in Cantonese or Filipino or Malay? So they start thinking, okay, yeah, there's something to look after. Now, sometimes they then don't invite me because they feel like I'm embarrassing them. But other times they'll invite me in so that they can ask us, what else do you notice? And then in doing so, they then know that when I go into those sort of environments, they know that I'm trying to get to know their environment even better. And also get to know their challenges, the things that makes them happy, the things that troubles them, and then that builds that relationship even better. Spend time with members. I need to say this, that meeting members at their place is one thing, and that's very much a touch point. But the real gold mine is when you spend time with the members, not just in parade. Like I said in this point here, spending time with members, I'm not talking about in parade. That's a given. That's not it. That's a program. Spending time with members includes means not while in parade. Non-formal engagements not only build strong bonds between the officers and members, but it then gives an opportunity for the gospel to be shared in a more casual, more intimate setting. So the picture that you see here is an intentional camp and outing, 4 days, 3 nights, with the 2nd Subang Jaya Boys Brigade and the Youth Ministry of First Baptist Church. Now, some of you may say, Pastor Mark, isn't that two of the same thing? Yes and no. They reach out to 2 different groups of people, and oftentimes they don't see each other unless it's a hi-bye on a Sunday. So what I did is that, okay, let's have a camp. Youth will take 1 day, do whatever you want. Boys Brigade, you take 1 day, you organize whatever you want the youth to experience together. And the officers then participate. In doing so, it opens up more space for speakers, officers, and NCOs to share the gospel to those who have yet to know Jesus. Jim Burns says this. He says, educators talk about the idea of hidden curriculum, which means that we must look for every opportunity or teachable moment outside the classroom setting to teach our students. This is the same for officers, to look for teachable moments with their members outside the parade grounds to teach them. So I remember a time where we were buying supplies for camps. And so for the organizing committee, all 10 of them, I said, okay, let's all do this together. We're going to go to Aeon Bake and we're going to go buy all the supplies together. We'll buy the styrofoam cups, we'll buy the Milo, we'll buy the biscuits. And then people will realize, oh, Mark, this is where you get this stuff. You know, how much is it? Oh, it's so much cheaper than this other grocer. Of course, it's wholesale. And you show them these are things to take into consideration. Wow, you know, I didn't know we needed that kind of budget for camp. And in doing so, they begin to realize, wow, it takes a lot of commitment to run this ministry. To which then, yes, but guess what? If Christ is willing to give up his life, what's giving a bit of time for other people? Then the members were like, wow, they really began to appreciate it. Finally, is the idea of reaching out. Okay, so this is verbatim from the book. And just as George had mentioned earlier, the internet cannot solve everything. And in fact, Jim Burns said this 12 years ago. He says, we can't compete with the latest technology in media to keep kids' interest. Producers and advertisers will spend millions of dollars to gain and keep the attention of adolescents. However, there is one thing that television, the internet, or any other competitors for kids' attention cannot give. They cannot give a real flesh and blood relationship. Students will respond to someone who genuinely cares for them and is willing to spend the time. Relationships, therefore, are the key to effective youth ministry. The greatest programs will fail and the most interesting curriculum will never be absorbed if the primary focus in youth ministry is not building solid, encouraging, positive relationships with students. The great news for most of us is that it isn't necessary for us to be an excellent communicator or to produce incredible programs. Rather, what we truly need is a willingness to spend the time with the kids and let them know we care. So let me just close with two very simple stories. So William Alexander Smith saw this off the bat, how essential it is to spend time with each other. So one thing that is very well documented is the habit of Sir William inviting NCOs and inviting squads or platoons to his house for tea. Now, tea time is from 4:30 until 8 o'clock. And so it's not just a meal, it's a whole program. There, the members are invited to have tea, sandwiches, cakes, talk in very clean and gentlemanly manner. So William teaches them how to be prim and proper before ladies, because that's his wife. And his wife will be the motherly instinct to not to just be hospitable, but to also to be motherly to them. Elbows off the table, you're using the wrong spoon to stir your tea. And then after that, they will do things like play parlor games, connect with one another, ask questions or have a discussion on a book that they are reading as a company. From there, the NCOs leave these tea times remembering, wow, yeah, I remember the conversations I've had with Sir William on these days. So being the copycat person that I am, I remember reading that when I was in NCO. And I said, okay, you know what? I'm going to do that. So for a while, NCO council meetings were always held not in school, but in McDonald's in Mid-Valley Mega Mall. So what we will do then is that we will have the meeting, we'll eat lunch, and we'll use the top space there for the NCO council meeting. And then after the meeting, we say, okay, who's up for a movie, or who wants to go play bowling, or who wants to go check out some of the shops downstairs. From there, we develop that relationship. We see how they interact with one another in a public or in a casual environment. And one thing I did find is that relationship still grows even until today. So people like Mr. Chan Kawing, people like Miss Eunice Lim, who is a ex-BB member, Miss Tai Sin Wei, Mr. Joseph Wong, Mr. Jeremy Fu. All these boys were my recruits. Now we're still one group where we are holding each other accountable even after Boys Brigade. And I cannot help but say that they are one of the bookmarks of my pride and joy in ministry, because I see them grow and mature in building the image of God in them. That, I feel, friends, is the fruit and the joy in establishing that relational youth ministry. So like I said, guys, it's very short. It's only 12 slides. It is just these points. I'm seeing a lot of chat questions. And so what I would like to do is I'll pass the time to George to help me umpire or moderate some of these questions so we can answer them as systematically as possible. Thank you so much for your attention. I really appreciate it. I hope that this is not critique to anyone. I want to give a shout out to especially Mr. Richard Chia, Mr. Andrew Tan, because they were my officers when I was in NCO before. And I hope that as I present this, I want to give you that place of respect and place of thanks, because I cannot be doing this if it weren't for your contributions. Together with Madam Angie, Madam Mag, Madam Show, all these officers, Captain Tan Kun Hai, I remember these names by heart because they are still in my heart and they carry me and I carry them with me wherever I go for the advancement of Christ's kingdom and the development of young people's character. So thank you so much. George, I'll pass the time to you, and while I get my phone to answer some questions.
Okay, thanks, Pastor Mark, for the wonderful sharing. I think a lot of chats you see there is the exciting chat between your officers, Kelvin, Kuching, Darren, Officer Martin, and things like that. So, but within that, there's one question that was asked by Madam Janet, is that can we customize in with their own personalities in terms of, in reference to talking about, just now you were talking about customizing each program to individually. So perhaps you can answer that.
Okay, so I want to say that this would that this approach will manifest very differently in different company sizes and in different chemistry or organizational structure, although companies are pretty much the same. But it depends on how much opportunity is available in the company. So one example that I can think of at the back of my head is 10th Kuala Lumpur company, Boys Brigade, actually have brevet ranks. Now, what are brevet ranks? Brevet ranks are ranks which is not the official rank, but when the brevet rank is given to the member or to the NCO, they are then given that level of respect and obedience so that they can lead in the direction in order to get a specific task done. And so other than the drill sergeant, we also have the logistics sergeant, worship sergeant, we have the drum sergeant, we have the brass sergeants for band. And for these brevet ranks, most of the time, they may in the end up becoming sergeants themselves, but most of the time, the moment they become actual sergeants, these brevet ranks are then given to junior NCOs and junior members so they may have the opportunity to grow. They can also take turns among themselves to hold on to that brevet rank. And so what we would normally do is we would challenge the members, not just blanket, but we will approach them personally and say, hey, you know, you seem to have a knack for drums. Can I make you drum sergeant? That doesn't necessarily mean that he's the band major or the drum major, but he is the one in charge of the logistics and the curriculum and the direction of the band. The worship sergeant, for example, it says, I see this guy, he's a good musician, and his soul, his heart is very sensitive to Christ. And so we invite him and say, hey, why don't you become a worship sergeant? We don't want you to just teach us the schematics of worship of the worship team, but we would like you to show us what does it mean to worship, because you seem to have that gift. So it's not needing to 100% customize to the personality, but seeing their personality and asking the question, which area in the company would best fit or best suit them? And see them thrive, see them grow, see them do things differently. You know, put your expectations aside and just use it as a reference point, because let's see how much more can they do. Does that answer the question, George?
Yeah, I believe so. That answers the questions it's a definite quite extensively. And I think today's topic is quite something that is close to our heart. I think all of us as officers, it's all about relations. At the end of the day, the Boys Brigade Ministry, through the awards, the classes are just methods, but at the end of the day, it's relationship between us and the members, but more importantly, the introduction of a bit of taste of what it's like to have relationship with God, in the sense through us, and a relationship with Jesus in this Christian community, and to have that kind of introduction to the members who haven't known Christ yet, and also why does Christianity is all revolves around relationship in that sense. And it's a relation and ministry, to put it. And I just want to share whereby of the experience I have as well. And similar with Pastor Mark, I grew up in the Boys Brigade Ministry, and because of the Boys Brigade Ministry, although even I grew up in a Christian family, but the Boys Brigade Ministry is what draws me closer to God through the officers. Exactly, and specifically, like some of the officers here, actually, we have today are my officers, like Officer Martin Voon, Mr. Martin Voon, which is here, and some of the officers who couldn't join in, and Mr. Hu from Sarawak are my officers as well. There are other inspirations that I look to, and somehow or another, they are the one who, I think, if you can put it strictly, they are the last influence that pulled me into this full-time ministry work in that sense. I mean, like, if I were not to know them or be inspired by them, I think even God calls, I wouldn't have come in a sense, in a way. But God, who knows everything, has placed them long before I come in to join the full-time ministry in the early days of my life to call me to that. Yeah.
George, if I may add on to that,
Yeah.
because that's a very good segue into showing an example of modeling. Now, let me give you a very good example about modeling. I remember we had one captain in the 10th Kuala Lumpur company, but behind that one captain are 3 madams, and I think quite a number of us still remember them. Madam Angie Tan, Madam Magdalene Lu, Madam Lin Shoukai. These 3 madams, one thing that my fellow NCOs really respect and appreciate is the amount of time they spend together, not just over the phone, but spending time like on Wednesday night, on Friday night, they will hang out, have dinner, and then start talking about BB ministry on Saturday. And because my NCOs saw that, we desire to mimic that. We want to model that. And so what we end up doing is that I remember my fellow NCO, Mark Leong. So there's Mark Tan and Mark Leong. And every Friday night, we would hog the phone line because last time there was no handphone. Nokia 3315 didn't come out until 2004, until 2003, 2004, or at least it wasn't available to us until then. And so we would call the phone line, which is only 4 cents a minute, and we will talk for 4 hours every Friday night. Start talking about, okay, who's doing parade, who's doing drill, who's doing drums, who is doing the logistics, what are we going to do for lunch later? You know, what do you think of David? You know, he's been missing for a few weeks. Okay, yeah, I'll give him a call. You know, after parade tomorrow. If I don't see him in parade tomorrow, I'll give him a call and we'll go from there. There was a time that my parents thought that maybe Mark Leong and I were in a homosexual relationship because we spent 4 hours every Friday talking on the phone. But then when we assured them, no, this is brotherly love, and it's not just with. And if it was a gay relationship, it wasn't exclusive because I would then call my other NCO Daniel. I'll call Stephanie. I'll call Glory. You know, all my fellow NCOs, and we will spend a couple hours on the phone easily preparing and talking and going through the program together. Yeah. So and why do we do that? It's because we saw that happening among our madams and officers before. So modeling, big deal, very big thing.
Yep, definitely. Totally agree with you. All right, so Mark, there's a very good question coming your way. So the question asked by Joshua, though, from 31st Penang. What are your thoughts about young officers or even older NCOs or primaries who get close to younger members of the opposite gender until they have PGR? So I think you are the perfect person to answer this question.
Okay, so in the 10th Global Company and in the 2nd Subang Jaya Company, we have this policy. If we see two people of the opposite gender or even the same gender spending a lot of close time together, we will dive in and we will inquire, and after some conversation, we would advise against it. But the best thing that we can do so far is advise. One thing I do notice on my dear officers, and this may sound controversial, I am not the type to say you need to stop it now. And the reason why I don't say that is because the moment I say that, it becomes a Romeo and Juliet situation, and more the reason they want to be together. Oh, you see, you see, our relationship is getting on Pastor Mark's nerves, so that means it must be good. Let's keep on going at it. So what we end up doing is that we ask the questions that, hey, you know, what does it benefit for the two of you to be exclusive together at the age of 15 years old?
Yep.
Do you even know where you're going to go for your pre-university? What are your aspirations? Because last time you used to think about your dreams and your ambitions independently. Now that the two of you are thinking of being together, if not together already, what is has it changed? Or are you just being selfishly depositing each other's emotions onto one another? So there's something to really push. And I would say this, the reason why they were willing to have this conversation with me, and I had these conversations before, and the reason why they're willing to do so is because they've seen how I converse with my wife, they've seen how I converse with them, how my relationship with them is close, but at the same time at a stop point of respect. Given the age gap is 10, 15 years or 10 years apart, and I can be brutally honest with them with showing no personal. I have no personal agenda for separating them or even seeing them together. I can be very objective.
Yep. Okay. Thanks, Mark. I think that answers the question of and between members. And one part of the question is also about young officers and members. I think before you share, probably I chip in the sense on my personal views on that as well. Our answer on the part of young officers and young members. Yes, I'll go for I am the type that, similar with Mark, is that I will not directly say no or stop that immediately. But first, to investigate and find out what is the reason, or find out the truth per se, because like they may be close, but they are not in a relationship per se, because we don't want to jump the gun. And at the same time, when we talk about the relational ministry, is the relationship between us and the officers and us and the member, which is more valuable in that sense. So yes, I'll agree. Yeah, I'll also agree that there should be a boundary to that as well. Yeah,
I have put some young officers and NCOs aside for showing bias. So I say, why? To which is, oh, we kind of like each other. That's not fair. Objectively speaking, that's not fair. Do not pull the company ministry into your relationship. Actually, because the two of you together, you should actually show more more strictness and expectation for one another. Because hey, it's a challenge. Otherwise, if you end up displaying bias and likings towards one another in public, you know, it will jeopardize the integrity of the NCO or officer. So if they can't keep it to themselves, I actually have told them before, you either take a break now and come back later, or you stop doing that now.
Yes. Yeah. So adding on to that is the rules are there for a reason, or the boundary is there for a reason. And it's more about how do we communicate that is matters more to the officers and to the members as well. Of course, because the idea is that, yes, we can be, sometimes it can be very tempting for us to just directly go in and split them up per se. But more importantly is how we communicate to them, to tell these fellow officers and to make them realize that the importance of having boundaries and the importance of not displaying that kind of biasness into the public. Let it be biasness towards relationship and towards any officers and members. Yeah, all right, so I think because of time, we need to move on to the next question. Mark, I think the next question is in the chat, whereby the question is, should we forego those who have not been interested in building relationship with the Boys Brigade, but rather other parties in our life? That might mean that we need to shrink our membership. Yeah, Mark, to you.
Okay. The quickest pragmatic answer is yes, because you can only work with people who is willing to work with you. you can only invest the time and bring out the fruit of people who to people who are really wanting to follow after your footsteps. Okay, but please bear in mind, okay, this may sound like a predestination and free will argument, but let's put that aside. Very keenly, how then can we tell who can have that potential? Very simple. It's how they resonate with you. You did not go up to them and tell them, follow me, like they got no choice. But rather in your modeling, in your incarnating yourself into the ministry, in resonating that attractive relationship that you have among your fellow officers and comrades, then they will stand up and say, hey, I like that. I resonate with that. Can I be part of that? And like any relationship, there's a commitment to say, yeah, of course, we're more than happy to have you. It's just that here are some expectations that we then have. So for example, the things that we share with you is me and you and me. It's only each other's story. So please don't share my story to other people, and I won't share your story to other people. You have that confidentiality in me. And at the same time, you can call out on me, and I can call out on you, but I will not call out on you and you call out on me in public. You would have it at a more cordial relationship. So we then end up developing that working relationship, which then ends up working out to a relational ministry with one another, and it comes up very naturally. What ends up happening naturally is that you will have members that will either be very happy to be privates and not care and not be looked upon by officers around it, and then they'll just finish up and discharge at the end of the day. Other times they will feel, oh, maybe this is not for me, and they might resign. You cannot say that it is your fault for pushing them away. No, you have an open invitation for them. It is then up to them to decide as to whether do they want to step up to that commitment or not.
Okay, thanks, Mark, for that great answer. All right, so any more questions? I think we can take one last question. If not, then I think the time is also almost up as well. Thank you guys very much.